in general, there's like a certain physicality to memories. Items, they bring back things that have happened, things that happened when we got them, or things related to the people we got them from.
Hello and welcome to One Cool Thing, a podcast from indie game studio Digitalfabrik, hosted by me, Hannah Nicklin. One Cool Thing is a podcast speaking with people in and around video games about one cool thing not from games, which is really fascinating right now. We'll introduce them and their practice, talk about the one cool thing they brought to the conversation, and consider how it's shaping how they think about their work. It's a chance to hear more about the practices of cool folks working in games, and hopefully somewhere where we can all reflect on how we think about how we make things. By the way, we as in Digitalfabrik have nearly finished making our most recent thing, which I think you'll admit is an excellent segue to remind you that you can wishlist Salt Sea Chronicles on Steam right now. It's a brand new flooded world story-driven adventure game where you guide a whole crew as they investigate the mystery of their missing captain, and we're going to be announcing the release date real soon, so please do go give that game a wishlist. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our next guest. Welcome to Wren Brier. Wren is a Brisbane-based game artist and creative director with a particular talent for and interest in pixel art. She's curated a whole pixel art exhibit with the Brisbane Powerhouse, which is a venue in Brisbane, as well as running workshops alongside other outreach work with groups such as Women in Games Brisbane. Wren has been working in games for about a decade as a freelance and in-house artist, before most recently undertaking a major collaboration with Witchbeam Games as the creative director, and as happens in sort of studios of this size, lots of other roles and duties besides, on the hit indie game Unpacking. Unpacking is described as a Zen puzzle game about unpacking a life, where you play as an unseen character as they unpack boxes after several major house moves from childhood to adulthood. It's constructed as sort of like a block fitting puzzle in some ways. You have to find a place for everything in order to sort of move on to the next location and time in that character's life. But it's also a beautiful portrait of someone growing up, changing as they grow, and leaves room for the player to also lean into painting the character themselves, as most of the items have many places they can fit. It won an extraordinary number of awards, which I'm not even going to begin to try and start reciting. So do go to unpackinggame.com to check them out. Wren, welcome to One Cool Thing. How do you feel about that introduction? Anything you want to add or develop or dispute?
So first of all, thank you for having me. So Women in Games Brisbane is more like a meetup group that I run just because I felt like we needed one here, you know, like when I was first working here, like in my first job, I really could have used something like that, and it didn't quite exist. So so a friend and I basically started it. The pixel art workshops were more a thing I did at a couple of local venues. But otherwise, yeah, that's very accurate.
So, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about One Cool Thing. What is the one cool thing you decided to bring to us?
So my one cool thing is sort of two cool things in one. I don't know. It's Eki Stamps, which is station stamps, and another thing called Goshuin, which are temple seals, temple and shrine seals, and they kind of go together because they're similar in a lot of ways, and they both involve stamping a piece of paper. The station stamps, I looked it up. Apparently this started way back in like 1931 was the first time they had those. And when I spoke with my Japanese teacher and told her that I collected station stamps on my last visit, she was like, they still have these? Like, they're still a thing? But I think they've like gotten more popular again in recent years. The way I found out about it was my friend found a TikTok about it, and we were going to be overseas together in Japan. And she was like, oh, I saw this TikTok about station stamps. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And I was already collecting the other thing, the Goshuin, in a notebook. So I was like, why not add another collect-a-thon to the trip?
Goshuin are thought to have originated way back in Buddhist practice of hand copying out sutras. So sutras are like kind of aphorisms and a kind of devotional practice where you worshipped through careful calligraphy of copying out sort of aphorisms nicely, and you'd sort of hand them in, and they'd give you these sort of stamps as a kind of like merit. As I'm not sure if I'm sort of fully expressing that, but popularized in Japan during the Nara period in the first century of the Common Era. These days, instead of exchanging for these hand copied sutras, you're more likely to offer a small amount of money to the shrine in exchange for them. I wonder if you could tell me about the contemporary context of them. Like, how did you discover them?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not entirely sure if I remember how I discovered them. I think maybe I was at a stationery store and they were selling these weird looking notebooks that had like these accordion pages and they were very pretty. And I was like wondering what they were for. There was either an explainer right there, like in writing for tourists, or maybe I asked someone. And I've heard the explanation that these are what's called Goshuin cho, which are notebooks for collecting Goshuin at temples. And my first reaction was, this, like, if I did this, would that be like weird and sacrilegious? Because I am not, this is not my religion. I don't want it to be weird. I don't want to do anything to disrespect someone else's religion. And the answer I generally got was like, no, it's fine. Just like, it's just something people do. It's a nice souvenir. Apparently, what I heard was that it used to be popular with like older ladies, older women, and became more popular with younger women in the current day. And that, yeah, tourists now from outside of Japan now collect them too. And yeah, you pay something like 300 to 600 yen, which is like I don't know in pounds or American dollars, but in Australian dollars it's about like $3 to $6. And you get like a temple worker or a shrine worker. There's like a specific booth you go to. So every time I go, I'm like hunting down this one specific spot. Sometimes the temples and shrines are pretty big. You don't know where this will be. And you find the spot and they do just like the calligraphy right in front of you and then stamp it. It's really pretty and like a really nice souvenir that also doesn't take up a lot of space and doesn't cost very much, so it feels very accessible.
Could you maybe sort of tell us a little bit about your collection in particular? Like what does it feel like? What is the because sort of you collect it in this Goshuinjo, which is a sort of a book where everything is sort of kept. Like, what does it feel like to hold? Where does your first one come from? Maybe you could take us through it.
Sure. So I mean, I can show it to you. Obviously, the audience will not be able to see. It's got little cats on it.
Oh,
And I had to, sometimes it just says Goshuin Cho on it, like printed, but mine was not printed, so I had to like try to write it by hand, so it's a little wonky. Um, and my first one, let's see, my first one is from Yasaka Shrine, um, which is, oh my gosh, trying to remember. I think Yasaka Shrine was in Kyoto. I hope I did not get that wrong
and you're
because this
showing me a
was
sort
quite a
of
few trips ago.
concertina style book,
Oh
right? So
yes,
it's
so
not
it opens up.
side bound. It opens like a concertina, and are the stamps on both sides of the paper or just on one side?
Just on one side. I've
Okay.
actually taken to writing on the opposite side, where they are from, and just small writing at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah.
Um, Funnily enough, I didn't do this initially, and then I didn't know where things were from. And on a recent long bus ride with a friend in Japan, we puzzled out where all of my where all of my stamps were from because all of these say like the name of the temple or shrine and the date, but like in Japanese style. So it'd be like year of, right now we're in Reiwa. Um, so I don't remember Reiwa something 3 or something. And I'm probably wrong. Oh my God, like if anyone Japanese is listening, I'm sorry. And yeah, and a blessing in the middle generally is like some kind of blessing. And yeah, we just went through and like tried to figure out based on both the writing and like the date and me being roughly like, where was I at this date? And then cross-referencing with my Google Photos, like just figuring out where all of these were, and we managed to get all of them. And since then, I've been writing them down carefully.
And for a listening audience, just to describe what one of the pages of this sort of concertina book looks like. So the base is this sort of red ink stamp, right?
Yeah, actually,
And
they do the stamp at the end. They first
oh,
do the calligraphy and then they stamp on top, but the
well,
calligraphy is black,
you're
so it
looking at the
stands
book.
out a bit better.
If you want to describe it, it's probably going to be much more accurate than me looking over the Zoom
Oh no,
call.
you're pretty accurate though. Yeah, it's got usually at least one or two, sometimes three red stamps on top of some calligraphy. So there's like a big calligraphy in the middle, which I think is well, I think generally it's the blessing, and I think generally the stamps contain the name of the Templar shrine.
Mhm.
And then off to the side there's like a bit more info and like the date. But yeah, I can't read the calligraphy very well. I can read a little bit of kanji, but especially not this stylized. So these are pretty hard for me to decipher.
And so, do you have like a particular favorite you could describe to us, whether or not it's, the place you were when you got it, or the particular style of the calligraphy or the stamp?
Let me think about that. I'm just looking through them and thinking. I guess I'm quite proud of the Kinkakuji one, which is the Golden Pavilion Temple, because usually it's extremely popular, like an extremely popular tourist destination in Kyoto. But I happened to be there last year while Japan was closed to foreign tourists because I was on a business visa for a games convention. And so I was able to get the stamp. And now usually when you've got like a really popular temple, they actually pre-prepare sheets in advance already calligraphied and stamped, and they just give you that and you can like glue it into your book if you have one. But this one I actually got the legit one, and yeah, I think it's pretty. It's that
Hmm,
big one here.
I see.
Yeah.
And so, what is it that sort of drew you to this the station stamps and the shrine stamps? What is it that drew you to collecting them?
I I I think I really like collecting things. This is the main thing. There's a certain gamification of travel with this. It's like a thing to do every time I go to a temple or shrine or a train station. Um, and it's like something to look for, and then it becomes a souvenir of that place. And then there's the experience of receiving the stamp or stamping it myself in the case of the station stamps. With the station stamps, it was even more kind of experiential because you do it yourself
Mhm.
usually. And there's something really nice and handcrafted about that. Like it's so easy to mess up. It's so easy to do it badly. Like my first one I did really poorly. It's like very faint, and then like I tried it a second time and made it worse. Um, so that happens, but then you learn, and you learn, okay, I'm gonna take a spare piece of paper with me and try it on that first, and that then I get a feel for how like wet or dry the stamp is, the ink pad is rather. And then there's like different kinds of stamps. So there's ones where it's like just a rubber stamp and an ink pad, and you use the ink pad to get the stamp wet and then stamp it. But then there's ones that are like this kind of big contraption, like big machine thing, like that presses the stamp when you pull a handle. And they're a little different. And then there's ones that have more than one color in them. There's ones that are like the ink is inside the stamp, so those ones sometimes have two colors, and those ones are usually very wet. So it's kind of like you get a feel for how the different stamps are, and you learn to like wiggle a dry stamp just the right way to like get it to be right. Yeah, so it's just it has a very I love arts and crafts. I love physical crafts, and so I really enjoyed using these stamps, and like in addition to that, like I'd go back to my hotel in the evening and then I'd look at the stamps from the day and kind of write little things in my journal about what the day was like. And Sometime later I ended up like buying some of my own stamps to extra like decorate the pages further. I bought stickers. I also stick like various kind of tickets and bits and pieces into it and like a little scrapbook. It's my stamp book is about passport size, so it's not very big. It just fits in my purse, which again is also not big. um so it's just a really nice portable little thing that I can instantly uh make new memories with. Like both there's the adventure of taking it somewhere and then finding the stamps, and then there's the actual experience of getting the stamp, and then the experience of like adding context to the page and
Mm,
decorating and all
yeah.
that. And
And
I have to
as
add too
no,
that
go ahead.
there's oh yeah, I have to add too that it's not just station stamps. Like they're not just at the stations. They're actually kind of everywhere once you start looking for them. And
Hmm.
that really surprised me. Um, like I've found stamps at truck stops, found them at random shops. Like I went to a handmade paper shop, and I can't remember if me or my friend asked, "Do you have a stamp?" And they were like, "Yes." And they had this beautiful stamp. So now it's in my notebook, and like I'll show it to you, even though the audience can't see. Sorry, audience. But it's this one, and it's like
Oh,
very
wow.
intricate.
It
Yeah.
shows someone writing in sand, right?
I think they're actually making paper.
Oh,
I think
okay. I
this is
see. Well, I
like
mean,
how they
I am
make the
view
paper.
let's excuse me for viewing over Zoom.
Yeah,
But
it's very, very blurry on my
yeah.
camera, but it's just a really nice stamp. And sometimes like a station would have more than one stamp.
Mhm.
It's almost like a little stamp rally within the station to find them, find all the different ones. And then Japan does do actual stamp rallies like that are time limited, I think, that where I think Pokemon ones are kind of the most famous ones, where over a certain period of time you go to specific spots and try to collect all of the specific Pokemon stamps, and I think you get a reward if you get all of them. I'm not sure. I didn't actually do those.
Mm.
Um, I just went to the ones that are always there.
I mean, as souvenirs go, it seems like a really like low impact activity in terms of because often you know, souvenir shops are full of plastic things and things that, you know, take up room in your and then what you put them on a shelf and you forget about them. Whereas this is such an elegant way of marking travels in a sort of really beautiful way. And also a practice slightly outside of everyday life. I feel like when I go to train stations, I'm especially when I'm not in my home country, maybe I'm panicking that I'm not reading the system properly. And how do I find out when the next train is? And how do they label the platforms? Whereas if you go there and you know that you're going there with enough time to get the stamp and also this idea that there are secret stamps out there like if you just ask maybe they have a stamp which is it just seems like a wonderful way to step out of everyday life for a second and just spend time being yourself out of the context that the world streamlines you into.
Absolutely, yeah. At one hotel we stayed at, it was like a traditional Japanese inn. Um, I I thought, you know what, let's ask. Maybe they'll have something, even though like there wasn't anything indicating that they would. And I just asked at the reception, and they were like, "Oh yeah," and they brought it out, stamped my notebook themselves. It was great. And then I told my friend who was there with me, who was also collecting. I was like, "They've got stamps," and we were doing this. We were a group, so it was like me and a few other friends. It was actually part of the trip was like a witch beam thing. And then part of it was just me traveling on my own or like meeting up with a friend and spending a few days with her. At times I was collecting stamps with people, like with my friend who I was visiting, or with these friends who came with me. And so one of us would find out about a stamp somewhere and like, post in the Discord, like, "Oh, there's stamps at this place, there's stamps in the visitor center," and it just kind of added this extra layer of playfulness, I think, to the trip.
Lovely. And I mean, you told us that you're someone who sort of typically collects things. Is the act of collection the thing for you, or is the collection the thing, if that makes sense?
I think both. Um, so yeah, some of this probably ties into stuff we'll talk about later about how this ties into games for me. But I think there's something there's both something really satisfying about collecting, but also like having a collection and arranging it and taking care of it. And every time I look at it, I'm like, okay, I remember where this came from, and like this is a positive memory. And I know, like we have a lot of physical things these days, and often like that's a negative. It's like where we hoard, or or it's like it's consumerism gone rampant and all that. But there is something quite meaningful to me about our belongings, like especially if we try to be discerning about what we own. Like the things we own can have a lot of meaning, and again, that ties in with unpacking for me, right? So I feel like it's kind of a through line in the things I make.
Well, let's take that natural segue, because I think I had a really cheesy one written down somewhere, and I think you probably saved the audience from me being really, really affected in how I join us up. So let's move on to how you think about your work in games in relation to collection and this particular collection that you brought to us. Where do you want to start?
I guess unpacking was a game, I think a lot of people at this point know the story because I've talked about it in 1,000 interviews, that it came about from Tim actually moving in with me, and we were unpacking his things, and we were like, oh, there's something game-like about this. And there was especially this element of like discovering like something about the life of the person whose items you were unpacking from just what they owned, because like every item Tim had almost had this story, and sometimes it was like self-evident, but sometimes it was the story that he'd have to tell himself. So in unpacking, we very much let the items do the talking themselves. We had very few words in that game, but I think in general there's like a certain like physicality to memories, where items just they bring back things that have happened, things that happened when we got them, or things related to the people we got them from. I think some of my most treasured belongings actually came from my grandma. A few years before she passed, we went through this box of photos and kind of miscellaneous things, documents, items, trinkets that belonged to my great grandma. It had just really ancient stuff in there, like because I'm originally from Israel, and so there was like documents from my great grandparents from the British Mandate of Palestine. There was like a photo of some guy in a fez, and my grandma was like, "Oh, that's one of your great grandpa's brothers back during the Ottoman Empire days." Like, it was just nuts. And this was like a box that almost got thrown away, and no one really wanted to take the time to like organize these photos into an album. And when I came to visit, my grandma brought it up, and I was like, "Oh, we can do this. Let's do this." And we went out and bought like one of those big sticky albums. Anyway, I digress. But basically, my grandma passed away actually the very year we started developing unpacking, just before Tim moved in with me, while we were packing his things. And she's got like the dedication at the end of the credits is to my grandma. She was very important to me. And that book, that experience of putting that book together was just like really meaningful to me. And whenever I think about like people's belongings and, people talking about throwing things out, I always just think about like the history of everyone's items, and like what they mean, and that's why I kind of have a hard time throwing things away. Although I assure you, I'm not a hoarder. Like I do throw things away. It's just painful.
Yeah. This is super interesting for me because I feel like I'm possibly quite a utilitarian person. Like I that's not, and that might be just because I've moved countries a couple of times, and there's definitely something about leaving everything behind. But like I think I allowed myself 10 books to take with me. And probably
Oh
the most
wow.
attached I get to things are books. And I feel like certain books stand in for certain things for me. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting to hear how unpacking sort of just arose from a literal unpacking, like the recognition that um we are in some parts the things that we surround ourselves with. And even if I identify as a utilitarian, right, the utility that I surround myself with still says something about me. In that context, I feel like it's quite interesting to move towards games in our discussion, because one of the things about I think the difference between collection in real life and collection in a game is that collections in games can be achieved. They are, for the most part, designed to be finite, and for there to be a point where they are done, they are finished. Do you think that makes them just different, or more satisfying, or less satisfying?
It's hard to say. Like in some ways, it's definitely more satisfying to be able to finish things. I think the way I play games isn't healthy. I am obsessive and I like to
Sorry, I
play
just
games. I
no,
nearly
no.
made you spill
I
your
think everyone
drink.
has their particular game that they have an unhealthy relationship. For me, it's Slay the Spire. I have a very unhealthy relationship with Slay the
Oh,
Spire. But sorry, do
I'm
continue.
afraid I'm afraid to start Slay the Spire because I know what will happen. I played Ring of Pain, which I think is in part inspired by Slay the Spire and shares some mechanics, and I sunk hundreds of hours into that game, so I know what will happen. I am a completionist and I love collectathon games. The problem is like when they're not good, and they
Mm.
like hijack that part of my brain, but I'm not actually having fun. So I try to be very selective about which ones I play because I know it will happen. It's just I want to actually enjoy it.
And do you feel
Um,
like you're able to unpick what makes collecting fun rather than something that's just triggering a part of your brain and you don't enjoy, except you still have to complete it, you know? Like,
I
do you
think I always realize it too late. After I've spent way too many hours, I'm like, no, this was a mistake.
So it's like the aftertaste almost that tells you that it was a good or bad collection experience.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'd say so. Like when it's good, I can definitely tell, but like when it's really good. But when it's bad, sometimes it takes me a while to notice that I'm just getting that, like, I don't know, dopamine hit or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Do you have
but
a good do you have an example of good collection that you really vibe off and that you feel like is um not falling over into that kind of icky aftertaste?
hmm, so I really loved Psychonauts 2.
Hmm.
There's, I mean, it's definitely like a collectathon in a lot of ways. And it's just it's not like that the things you collect have to be that meaningful. It's more that the act of collecting them has to be enjoyable, not just because the number goes up gives you like a hit, but because like things are placed in interesting ways and like there's not too many of them, and they're varied. I think it's kind of what it is. I'm still kind of learning to put my finger on it. I love that kind of game, and
Mm.
I'm still not very good at like figuring out what makes them good or bad. I think it's like those games that are especially good when the environments are varied. So like playing both Psychonauts 2 and Banjo-Kazooie, like the environments are very diverse and every place you go feels like a unique place. And I think that's also part of what I enjoyed about the stamp collecting is it kind of helps like it marks all these places and all these places are different. By the way, I heard that there are over 9,000 train stations in Japan, so it's I guess technically finite if you wanted to collect them all. The ones in Tokyo are more collectible if you wanted to like try to get the whole Tokyo set, or I think it's like the JR East set or something.
Mm.
I think they have 78 stamps in Tokyo, which is a
Okay.
lot. So I have like maybe half a dozen from Tokyo. So I'm not aiming for all of them, but there's something really nice about collecting something that you know you're not going to get all of as well,
Mm.
because the fact that it's endless means you can always keep going. You can always come back and see more and discover things.
And it also feels like listening to you speak about whether in games or in real life, the reason why these stamps are great in real life is because they're a souvenir of actual like enjoyable travel and exploration, right?
Exactly.
And then
Because
if you
I
take
thought about, oh, sorry.
no, I was gonna say if you take that into a games experience, I feel like probably bad collection could be expressed as extrinsic, like you're just doing it to collect the thing, whereas good collection is intrinsic. There's a challenge involved in collecting it. Like the Psychonauts 2 experience is that a lot of the things that you collect in there, challenging and fun to find. Like, oh, how do I get from there to there to get that thing? You try it a few times and you accomplish it, and then the thing you collected doesn't become the extrinsic reward. It is the marker, the souvenir for the intrinsically fun kind of exploration that got you to that point, right? So I think
Exactly.
probably
Yeah.
there's a thing between the
There's
souvenirs being the thing and the souvenirs being the reward.
Yeah, that's totally right, I think. There's also like the whole thing of collectibles, like say coins in Mario games are like there to lead the player, right? To lead
Mm.
them to in the right path. And that's something that collectathons do. And it's another reason for a collectible to exist, is to lead you somewhere. But it's not like you're just going for it, and like just collecting that thing is like that. Yes, this was my goal. I'm just getting these few coins. It's like you follow a trail of coins because you want to see where they take you.
Mm, 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 mm. Absolutely. Um, and so I wonder if there are particular sort of collection mechanics you could speak to us about in unpacking.
So not so, I guess a little bit, because you don't, in unpacking, we very specifically decided that the theme, well, we didn't quite decide this actually. It's more, it emerged as we were working on it, but the theme is kind of doing the best with what you've got. Um, so you get these situations that the main character is in, and you didn't get to lead her to that situation. Nothing you did affected her journey, or what the level is like, or what items she owns. You don't get to choose any of that, but you do get to choose where to put the items that she has in this one specific space, in this one apartment. And then you show up at the next department and you're like, okay, what's different here? Where am I now? What How can I make this space my own? So there, in a way, you're not collecting anything because everything's already been determined for you, but you collect in the sense that there's often sets of items in the game. Sometimes like you've got, it can be something as simple as like there's a set of matching mugs or plates in this kitchen, and as you go through the boxes, you uncover more and more of them. And eventually you're like, oh, I've got all six, and here they are neatly on the shelf. And there's something satisfying about having all of them like that. Um, and then there is collecting like the chick plush toys or the souvenirs. So the character collects a couple of things, and that's definitely inspired by me, and my collections. We thought souvenirs could be fun because like they feel meaningful. They feel like, yeah, something, either, well, we actually kept it a bit vague, like either she went somewhere and got these, or maybe some relative is giving them to her, because actually like they're all souvenirs from Europe and she lives in Australia, and that's quite far to travel. Like maybe they're not even her travels, but she collects these, and every time the player sees one, they can be like, oh, did she go to this place? Or like, what does this one mean? Where does this represent? And then the the chickens were sort of, uh I don't know. I do collect some plush toys, and I thought it would be fun to have something that just the character keeps getting more of over time. Like I have certain collections that I've been collecting since I was quite young. Like there's one collection that I've had since I was about 14 or 15. And I've still been adding to it every now and again over the last few years. So I thought it would be interesting to have like more and more of a set show up and players kind of discovering these every time there's like more of them. And I've heard a lot of people reacted very positively to the chicks and the like how they keep appearing.
So
Some
much so
people,
you had to produce real life versions of them for people to buy, right?
oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, they're for me. I wanted them. When I designed them, I was like, I want to own these one day. This is like, if unpacking does well, this is my reward. And it happened. I'm so happy.
Just reward indeed. I want just a tiny little like side line here. You mentioned that the character lives in Australia, and I've played through the game, and I feel like I suspect there's probably some Australianness about it that I completely miss because I just don't see it. It's just making me think about those sort of hidden collections that are out there. And I wonder if there's like hidden Australian clues that you could share with us. Like this would only exist in Australia, or this is a particular thing that every Australian had when they were a kid.
Sure. So I don't know about a thing that every Australian had when they were a kid, because funnily enough, I didn't grow up in Australia. Maybe there is some stuff that like that we put in that was more a contribution from Tim. But actually, unpacking takes place entirely in Brisbane, where we live.
Mhm.
It's in different suburbs of Brisbane. And the biggest tell is in the boyfriend apartment. There is a bridge outside the window, and people from Brisbane are like, "Is that the Story Bridge?" Like they immediately know. Even people who've moved away from Brisbane, they're like, "That's the Story Bridge." Although some people from other countries see the bridge and they're like, "Oh, isn't it this bridge that's like near where I am?" And it's like, no, it's not. It's a specific bridge. But there's also other things. I think my okay, so one nice one, for example, is in the childhood bedroom that you also revisit at a later stage. The the walls, the way the walls are built, is very specific to Queensland, where Brisbane is. It's the type of house is called a Queenslander,
Mm.
and it's got these kind of um, vertical slats and then like a horizontal slat in the middle. So they're like very typical to Queensland. And there's like a eucalyptus tree in the a gum tree in the window. And even the audio like is all recorded in Brisbane, like mostly in Jeff's neighborhood, but some of them like in other people's houses, like our apartment. And so you hear like Australian birds outside, and Australian birds sound actually really distinctive. Sometimes they sound horrendous. I love them, but they look beautiful and sound insane. Um, so sometimes you can hear them. We actually had to like um tune out one of the birds on purpose because it was so annoying. It's been removed. It's a bird that lives outside of our window and drives me insane half of the year. Uh, but
Brilliant.
yeah.
I've got some Australian cycling friends who keep on getting attacked by birds in certain seasons. I
Oh, is
believe it's
that the
back.
magpies?
Yeah, they get
The
they
magpies
say
are
they're good for like
vicious.
sprint efforts. If a magpie swoops you, you need to get out of the way quickly.
Yeah, in Australia, when you cycle, you got to wear like your helmet with like zip ties poking out the top so that if magpies attack you, they hit the zip ties and not
Oh,
your
I don't
helmet.
know if that's real or not. I really want to believe
I swear to God, when I first got here, I was like, why are people wearing this? That looks so stupid.
Even like
And then
the
someone
kind of
explained it to me.
weirdo people like me who wear very, very expensive helmets on very expensive bikes. I think even do it. I'm gonna have to ask everyone. I'm gonna have to go on the cycling channel on this
I don't
Discord.
know. I don't know that everyone does it, right? But like I'd seen it and I was like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah,
And people
yeah.
explained to me that this is why. And it's the only reason that made sense because it does not look great. It looks kind of stupid. Sorry, cyclist.
Don't worry.
But
Great, yeah,
yeah.
great. So, kind of little sideline there. Thank you so much for sharing the Australianness that I'm now going to go back to unpacking and collect in my head.
Can I add one more?
Oh yeah, I do.
My favorite one probably is there's one level where it's like the level you move out of home on your own. That one takes place in a suburb called Tenerife, which
Mm.
has a lot of like these old converted wool sheds that have been like turned into trendy apartments. Um, and outside there's a bunch of trees. And in the next move, and this is spoilers, when a partner moves in with you and it's the same apartment, it's a different season. It's spring in Australia, and which is the opposite time to spring everywhere else. Uh, but it's spring, and all the trees outside are purple because that's jacaranda season, and the jacarandas bloom purple, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
So we really wanted to put the jacarandas in the game.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're rounding out on a really good chat. We've gone from your travels in Japan and the station and shrine sort of stamps. You've shared some of your collection with us, and we've sort of touched on how you personally are a collector, and also how that's influenced your games. I wonder if there's any sort of thing you've really wanted to say about how you relate from your sort of collecting to games, these particular collections, or anything you'd like to offer the listening audience for their own thoughts about how they make things or collect things.
Hmm. I think, yeah, it's important to remember why you're collecting things, whether it's in a game or outside of it, and that, yeah, items only mean something if they have some kind of context. So that's kind of what I try to put into my games,
Mhm.
and into the things I collect in real life.
Wonderful. That's a really, really useful thought. I yeah, like I said, I'm not a collecty person, so I think probably this has been a really instructive conversation for me because I've not always fully understood the game design of collection. I mean, I think we've made fun collectible moments in both Mutazione and our most recent game, Salty Chronicles, has this sort of sticker book, which you
Oh,
collect, and you have to go through a number of playthroughs to find all the stickers. And the stickers are in themes. So there's a sticker which is like crabs, 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 and you have to collect crabs. There's another sticker which is fabulous felines, and it will be cats that you meet. I don't know why I'm just thinking of the animal based ones right now. Um, but I think that I, with the help of the team, came to a theory through practice, which I now understand a little bit better from listening to you, which is that actually they are a little bit like station stamps. They're not really the thing that you're looking for, and we don't instrumentalize them in the UI except when you go and look at your sticker book. And then you go, oh, I went there and I got this, or I'm one sticker out on my fashionistas of the aisles. So maybe I should go looking for people who kind of have fancy clothes on.
oh,
So yeah, I've really learned from listening to you actually.
actually, that's stickers are a really good point because we also have stickers in unpacking that you can collect. They are our one collectible now that you remind me. It's been a little while. No, I mean, I played the game pretty recently because we just released it on phones. So I was playtesting that all the achievements work, and the stickers are the achievements. So I should have thought about this really. Um, but yeah, when we were designing that, it was like really important to us that the stickers don't become the goal of the player. Like they're all, first of all, they're all hidden achievements. So we never tell you like, look for this. Um, but we wanted them to be, yeah, little mementos of things that you do in the game that are fun or funny, or yeah, just kind of something that you'll remember. One that gets people sometimes, and this one's a little dark, but like we knew people would take the toaster and put it like in the bathtub or the sink or something. We knew people would do this. So we
Never
were
entered
like, all
my
right.
mind, but
Oh,
of course, some people
they
do. Of course,
they
they do.
absolutely did. So we were like, all right, we gotta preempt this. Like we gotta acknowledge this to let them know like we're on to you. And so there's a sticker for that. There's like a little cartoon skeleton being electrified. Um, And I actually saw someone on a stream, 'cause they like um clipped the little video and sent it to us. And it was like she gets the toaster out and she's like, oh, I know what to do with this. And she puts it in the bath and she's like so pleased with herself. And we like specifically put this little delay between you doing a thing that gets you the achievement and the achievement actually popping up so that you get the enjoyment of the action itself and then you get the reward. So she put it in the bath, like she was like chuckling to herself, and then the achievement pops up and she just like covered her face and was like, oh my God, they called me out. And that just felt so good.
Yeah,
That's basically what we were going for.
And because these collections, they sit at that space between game designer and player, and they don't go through the material game in the same way. So the game might be somewhere where you pretend you're someone else, right? But like sticker books and achievements and stuff, they're like us, the game designer, speaking to you, the player, more directly, in terms of like the levels of sort of discursive space in a game. And in designing for that space, you're sort of saying, hey, you thought you were original, we see you, we've made a special sticker just for you. Like exactly. I think that there's something really playful about that, and also like the theory crafting that can come from a group of people getting together and going, there's one sticker missing, how do we find it? What's this little clue mean? Like, again, producing intrinsic motivations and playfulness, which makes the experience rewarding, as opposed to just the thing being the thing that drives you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I was really pedantic too when we implemented this. I was very adamant with Tim that we implement this delay and how long the delay should be between doing the thing that gets the achievement and the achievement popping up, because again, it was so important that the experience was the thing you do in the game, not the achievement. The achievement was like a cherry on top. So even with other achievements, like you can make the mannequin dab, or you can set the time on the microwave, and like you do these things, or you solve an equation on the fridge with magnets. And you do the thing, and we want you to do the thing and feel satisfied about doing the thing. That like I did something original.
Absolutely. And there's something really playful as designers of creating a space where that's possible, playful about saying, hey, we see you, and playful about the timing of that design, just as you're describing there, which I think is really lovely to think about. We're sort of coming up on our hour now, so I just wanted to ask if there's anything else you might like to offer us that you were sort of really burning to speak about.
I think we covered pretty much everything.
Wonderful. And do you have anything that you'd like to promote, or any socials that we should follow you on?
Well, Unpacking just came out on iOS and Android, so if you want to play it on the go, you can do that now. It's half the price that it normally is, but it's still a paid game where you just pay once and then you own it. No in-app purchases or anything like that, because we felt like that was very antithetical to what the game is. Otherwise, yeah, you can follow me on various things. I guess Twitter mainly, Renegade, or now Blue Sky Renegade. That's like with a W at the start, like my name. And Unpacking on unpackinggame.com, like Hannah said before.
Wonderful. Go look at all those awards, and it's basically available on every platform now that it's on iOS and Android.
It truly is. Yeah.
You can find it wherever you want to go. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it. One of the highlights of 2022?
2021.
21. Sorry.
End of.
What is time in any case, though?
I know.
Okay, well, thanks so much for your time, Wren, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of One Cool Thing from Die Fabrik. I really enjoyed, as a non-collector, as I definitely mentioned a couple of times, making some connections there that I hadn't quite made before about the pleasure of connection and how it exists as good design as well as in joyful life activity. So I hope that was as valuable to you as it was to me. And if it was valuable to you, then do go and leave a rating or review, hopefully glowing where you can. can. It's a great way to say thank you for the time that we put into this. If you would like to check Die Gute Fabrik out on socials, we're in all of the places: Instagram, Twitter, we're now on Mastodon and Blue Sky, TikTok. We're just really tired. We're tired and we're in a lot of places. And you can find us in those places as GUTEFABRIK. And please, once again, do wishlist our brand new story-driven adventure game, Saltsea Chronicles, on Steam. Just one last thing. This might be the last episode of this first season of One Cool Thing. We've been keeping going as long as sort of the energy held us up and we're able to do all the work behind it, but we're coming up on beginning to look at the launch period for our next game. Secret as to when that is precisely still, but it's in 2023 and we're running out of 2023. So we're just going to be taking a break while we concentrate on that as a studio. I have really enjoyed having these conversations, and I really hope that you've enjoyed listening to them. I definitely want to try and return in the new year, but it all depends on kind of our capacity at Die Gute Fabrik. There may be a couple of bonus episodes in the time being. I may even ask someone to interview me as we sort of talk more about the game when we release it. But in the meantime, I just want to give a really big shout out to some of the people who have been instrumental in making this happen. There's obviously all of the wonderful guests who've come on board. Every single one of them brought in something just really unusual and gave us a really wonderful starting point for a conversation about their practice and also their sort of, life as someone who makes games but also lives a life. So that's been super wonderful. The podcast is produced, edited and sound designed by Tom Wally, who's a wonderful producer who works for the BBC. He works for one of my favourite cycling podcasts, and I do recommend just giving Tom Wally a follow on socials. It's Wally with an H and two L's, WHALLEY, because if you want to know where the cool podcasts are coming from, then Tom is usually messaging about them, tweeting about them. I don't even know what word we're supposed to use for it anymore. Sending messages into the ether about what's happening. So yeah, I do recommend checking Tom out, and thanks again, Tom, for all your wonderful work. And then finally, just a shout out to Unimin Kavanagh, who is a colleague of mine at Die Gute Fabrik, an assistant producer who has been doing a great work on just sort of making sure that all of this happens. So production, research. I prepare the sort of, the introductions, and I do research to make sure that the conversations can happen. But all of that is underlined by Una Ming's excellent work. So just, a big shout out to Una Ming. And then another shout out to Nick Ellis, whose music that you can find under the name Tenby on Bandcamp, TENBY. Thanks so much for listening to the sort of vibe I wanted for the podcast and producing this lovely sort of morning show style, bouncy, chill vibe that I think works super well. So just, thanks to everyone who's helped make this happen. I hope that you've enjoyed listening. And if you do, please do share your enjoyment by either leaving a rating or review or just telling people about your favourite episodes, because I just really want these wonderful people to be listened to. That's what this is all about. Okay, stay thoughtful, friends. Take care. Goodbye.